Trump. Now, I will agree that I definitely take issue with a number of decisions that Donald Trump makes, especially when it comes to the people that he decides to appoint to very important positions, including this one, because I did have to make sure that I wasn't going crazy. But when I say that you are the least qualified FBI director in the history of the FBI, that is real, because you are the only one that never even served with the FBI prior to joining, yet we are supposed to believe that you are the greatest thing since sliced bread. I didn't ask you a question.
If you watched today's congressional hearing and felt like it was less about procedure and more about raw accountability, you were not alone. What unfolded on Capitol Hill was not just another tense exchange between lawmakers and a federal official. It was a revealing moment about trust, power, and the deep divide over how Americans are protected and who feels protected at all. Before we go any further, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you do not miss our ongoing coverage breaking down what really happens in these rooms and why it matters to your life.
Man, oh man, there has been so much today, and I truly don't know where to start. So I'm just going to make sure that we start off with a few facts. So a couple of facts that we need to make clear for everyone is that, number one, Director Christopher Wray, when he was appointed to be the head of the FBI, was appointed by Donald Trump. Now, I will agree that I definitely take issue with a number of decisions that Donald Trump makes, especially when it comes to the people that he decides to appoint to very important positions, including this one, because I did have to make sure that I wasn't going crazy. But when I say that you are the least qualified FBI director in the history of the FBI, that is real, because you are the only one that never even served with the FBI prior to joining, yet we are supposed to believe that you are the greatest thing since sliced bread. I didn't ask you a question. Now, what I want to go through is to talk about why you are a failure and why, honestly, we just need to tell you bye-bye. I know that you got a little upset and you put on your show for your boss because it seems like you're trying to save your job when it came to talking to Senator Booker yesterday. But let's go through some of your failures. So before you were even confirmed, and I think one of my colleague from Georgia, pointed out that you are already targeting career officials so that you could direct illegal firings. Mind you, these cases that you were so upset about, which are the ones tied to Trump, the cases came through his handpicked FBI director. And frankly, when people sit around and say things like, oh, you know, we're happy because now we feel safe. I don't know who feels safe in this country except for the white supremacists, because I specifically as a black woman definitely don't feel safe. And frankly, my colleagues have been real nice to you today, and I applaud them, but I don't have the same demeanor because I know that multiple colleagues on this side of the aisle have faced death threats. In fact, somebody tried to kill one of my colleagues. And frankly, I don't know if this FBI or under your leadership, if those people would have been caught. I don't have any confidence in you. And if we start talking about the reasons that I lack confidence, we could start with you not just wanting to acknowledge some simple facts. Simple facts like the vast majority of the threats are coming from right-wing extremism. And I know my colleagues have tried to stress this, but I decided that I would maybe do it in a different way. Number one, I have a couple of UCs. Kim Buck, one of multiple Republicans receiving death threats for voting against Jim Jordan as House Speaker.
Without objection.
Another one, Republican lawmaker says she received death threats after voting against Jim Jordan in Speaker's race.
Without objection.
In addition, there was another one from another colleague who now is leaving Congress because they said that they were calling his wife anonymously and threatening her life to the extent that she ended up sleeping with a firearm.
Without objection.
Okay, so here's the deal. How are we supposed to have confidence when you're sitting up here telling the Senate yesterday that it will take you 14 years before you can get the FBI fully staffed to do their jobs. You're also now redirecting resources so that they can go and play ICE agents on the streets. You're getting rid of your most qualified people. And even when it came down to somebody that you consider to be a friend, you were posted up having some fancy dinner to the extent that you posted not only once erroneously, you posted twice erroneously as it relates to catching somebody. And then you want to go and say, let me take a victory lap. Because honestly, if it wasn't for parents deciding that they were going to turn in their child, it seems like y'all wouldn't have got there. Even though he literally confessed online. So I'm confused about what it is that the FBI is doing except for trying to put on a show for the apprentice or whatever you want to call him. The day after all of this took place, there was domestic terrorism that was taking place at HBCUs. They were targeted. Yet I didn't hear anything from the FBI about what was going on. And again, black people kept saying, how did we end up in this? Because the numbers are so very clear that white supremacy is a problem. And honestly, I've not heard anything out of you today that makes me believe that you're going to do anything about the white supremacy problem. The one that is leading to children being killed, children being shot, as well as members of their community as they're worshiping in their churches.
The time of the gentlelady has expired. If the gentleman would like to respond to any of that. Well, I'll respond. Kash Patel, as I said when I introduced him, public defender, former prosecutor, top staffer on the House Intelligence Committee, Deputy Director of National Intelligence with the National Security Council, Chief of Staff at the Department of Defense, and FBI Director. I think that's pretty good resume for the guy who's now running the top law enforcement agency in our country. And we've seen all the stats that he's given to the committee on how much better they're doing at getting the bad guys than the previous guy was doing. With that, I recognize the gentleman from South Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Patel, I think you're witnessing some auditions, clickbait auditions for the Academy Award for my Democratic colleagues. We'll see how they fare as they're on MSNBC later on today. But do you care, before I launch into my line of questioning, to respond to Ms. Crockett from Texas on that very elaborate and theatric display?
Here's what I've learned in my government service. I don't give a damn what they say about me as long as I'm succeeding in the mission. We're succeeding in the mission because the men and women of the FBI have never been empowered to do more work and to hit the streets harder than by President Trump's authorities and resources he's given us. And so all I care about is that we are capturing more child predators than ever before, taking more drugs off the streets than ever before, that we are capturing murderers at a significantly historic rate, and we're delivering this country the lowest murder rate in recorded history. That are facts that you cannot dispute. But you can come at me all you want. I don't care.
Thank you, Director, for that, and we appreciate your service. We appreciate the results speak for themselves, I think, pretty plainly, and your commitment not only to results, but to transparency, so we do appreciate that.
At the center of the firestorm was FBI Director Christopher Wray, a man whose leadership has long been controversial and whose presence before Congress today reignited questions that have been simmering for years. One fact that framed much of the criticism is this: Christopher Wray was appointed FBI director by Donald Trump. That alone does not determine his performance, but it does place him squarely inside the political context that lawmakers were confronting head-on. What followed was not a polite policy disagreement. Representative Jasmine Crockett of Texas delivered a blistering and deeply personal critique, one that went beyond statistics and into lived experience. She argued that Wray's leadership represents a failure not only of management, but of moral clarity. Her central charge was simple but devastating, that under his watch, the FBI has failed to prioritize the most dangerous and persistent threat facing the country today: right-wing extremism and white supremacist violence. If you are finding this breakdown helpful so far, take a moment to subscribe. We bring clarity to moments that are often buried under political noise. Crockett challenged the idea that Americans broadly feel safer today. She made clear that as a black woman, safety is not an abstract concept measured only by arrest numbers or press releases. Safety is about whether threats are taken seriously, whether communities under attack are defended, and whether the federal government acknowledges where violence is actually coming from. She pointed to the steady stream of death threats aimed at members of Congress, including Republicans, following the speaker fight, threats that emerged from the same extremist ecosystems the FBI has repeatedly identified in its own internal assessments. This is where the hearing became especially instructive for viewers at home. Crockett was not simply accusing the FBI of incompetence, she was accusing it of misaligned priorities. She cited the redirection of FBI resources toward immigration enforcement roles, a move that critics say pulls agents away from domestic terrorism investigations. She also highlighted alarming staffing projections, including testimony suggesting it could take more than a decade to fully staff critical units, and admission that raises serious questions about preparedness. And then there was the issue of trust. Crockett questioned whether the FBI under current leadership could be relied upon to respond effectively to credible threats, including assassination attempts and attacks on historically black colleges and universities. She pointed out that in multiple high-profile cases, arrests occurred not because of sophisticated federal intervention, but because family members or online platforms alerted authorities. The others asking a different question: who is still being harmed, who is still being threatened, and why those threats continue despite years of warnings from intelligence agencies themselves. Before we wrap up this segment, make sure you are subscribed. These are conversations that will shape policy, elections, and public trust going forward. There is also an important correction and clarification viewers should note. While Republican speakers praised the resume of Kash Patel and referenced his prior government service, he is not the current FBI director. Christopher Wray remains in that role. The confusion underscores a broader issue. Political rhetoric often blurs roles and timelines, making it harder for the public to track accountability accurately. That is why careful reporting and fact-checking matter now more than ever. So, what did we really learn today? We learned that the debate over public safety is no longer just about crime rates. It is about credibility. It is about whether federal law enforcement acknowledges the threats its own data identifies. It is about whether leadership listens when lawmakers describe fear not as a talking point, but as a daily reality. And it is about whether dismissing those concerns as drama widens the very trust gap the FBI says it wants to close. As this story continues to develop, we will keep breaking down not just what was said, but what it means, who it affects, and what questions remain unanswered. If you value reporting that treats these moments with seriousness and humanity, subscribe now and stay with us.